Good afternoon. I've actually been thinking about this talk for several months. And I'm excited to talk to you because I'm firmly convinced that the leadership we need to move forward is going to come from women, not from men. I believe that we've had enough of kind of a male-dominated perspective. And what I've been trying to do for the past 25 years of consulting is bring a more wholehearted perspective to organizations. Now, 1/3 of my clients are family-run businesses. Some of them are several billion dollars in size, some of them are smaller. But what many people forget or don't know is that the majority of Americans are employed by family-run businesses. While Fortune 500 companies are shedding jobs, it's the entrepreneurs, and many of the new entrepreneurs are women who are stepping forward. And there's a part of my tradition is a Cherokee, and there's a story the Cherokee tell about two braves who were very competitive. And they used to go out to see who could bring back the most game. So they were out hunting one day and they saw this big bear, and they both went after the bear. They got it cornered against a rock wall, and they both drew their bows, seeing who could kill it first. And the bear dropped to its knees and spoke, "I am a spirit in the form of a bear. If you spare my life, I will grant you each one wish." Well, the first brave looked and said, looked at the other one, my chance to finally shine and be better. I wish to be the smartest man on earth. And the spirit granted it, and he suddenly had this incredible intellect. Well, the other one looked at him and said, "I want to be smarter than the smartest man on earth." And poof, he was turned into a woman. Now, I was trained as a psychotherapist. I was in private practice in Chapel Hill as a marital and family therapist. And I will tell you that the level of psychological sophistication and understanding of relationships and what it takes to help people learn and grow and to live as wholehearted leaders is something that is almost natural, that flows from the way women are raised and the way they think. And we need much, much more of that in corporate America, and we need it in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, and someday, hopefully, in the White House. I would like to share with you a poem that was the front piece for my first book, my second book actually, The 7 Acts of Courage. And it's a short little poem from the Sufis that I really like, that captures the essence of what I want to try to get across today. Sing a song of glory, and you will be that glory, for not are you but song, and as you sing you are. You thought you were the teacher, and find you are the taught. You thought you were the seeker, and find you are the sought. Sing a song of glory, and you will be that glory, for not are you but song, and as you sing, you are. What I want to talk about today is courage. And people say, why courage? Why write a book on courage? Why talk about courage? Why do I keep bringing up the issue of courage in corporations, in dealing with families, and dealing with individuals? The word actually comes from the French, which stands for heart. So when we're talking about courage, we're talking about finding our heart. We're talking about helping people find their hearts. And you think about the stories that inspire you, the movies, the stories, the songs. It's about people who found the courage to stand up and move through their fears. Now, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to go after what I most want, the willingness to do the right thing, the willingness to seek what my heart knows is right, regardless of my fear, anxiety, or self-doubt. One of the things I work with when I'm working with female executives many times is them truly finding their voice, to get past the self-doubt. They have something to say. It's important. It needs to be heard. It's helping people realize that anxiety, fear, and self-doubt aren't signs something is wrong. It's a sign I need to step up to a higher level. It's a call, and it is a challenge to do that. A longer poem that I really like is by the Welsh poet David White. And that poem captures for me what I think we're all about in our families, in our lives, in our work. And it goes like this. It's called The True Love. There is a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours. We could say, There is a faith in loving fiercely the work that is rightfully yours. There is a faith in loving fiercely the life that is rightfully yours. Especially if a part of you never believed you could deserve this loving and beckoning hand held out to you this way. I'm speaking now of faith and the testament of loneliness. I'm speaking now of faith and the testament of loneliness and what we feel we are worthy of in this world. Years ago in the Hebrides, I used to watch an old man walk on the gray stones every morning to the shore of baying seals who would press his hat to his chest and say his prayer to the turbulent Jesus hidden in the water. And I'm reminded of the story of the storm and people suddenly waking and seeing the distant yet familiar figure far across the water calling to them, and how each one of us is waiting for that sudden waking and that abrupt call and the moment when we must say yes, except it will not come so grandly, it will not come so biblically, but more intimately and subtly in the face of the one we were meant to love. More intimately and subtly in the face of the life we were meant to love. More intimately and subtly in the work we were meant to do. So that when we step out of the boat, everything holds us and everything confirms our courage. And if you wanted to drown, you could. If you wanted to drown, you could, but you don't. Because after all these years and all these struggles, you're simply tired of drowning. And you wish to live, and you wish to love, and you will cross any territory, no matter how fluid, no matter how dangerous, to take in your hand the one hand you were meant to hold. For me, that's a very powerful, whether you're a Christian or not, the image of the disciples waking up and Peter being terrified, and he sees Jesus walking across the water, and he's invited to step out of the boat. And as long as his gaze is fixed on the divine, on Jesus, he's able to walk on the water. But then he becomes anxious and fearful, and he loses his courage. He starts looking down instead of where he's going, and he starts to sink. And he has to take the hand to pull him back from drowning in the waters. I believe the essence of courage is the courage to claim the life, the love, the work, the family, the community we were meant to have. And it requires courage because there is so much darn fear, so much anxiety, so much self-doubt in the world today. So the second book, The 7 Acts of Courage, that I wrote, I really outlined 7 distinct acts of courage. And I want to go through those briefly. And I may inflict another poem or two on you in the process. Because there's so much to say, the only way to compress that wisdom is with some poems. The first act of courage for me is the courage to dream and put forth a dream. And I remember working with a 69-year-old grandmother who had a dream and she wanted to go back to college. She had finished high school, she had raised children, she had grandchildren, and her kids said, "Mom, don't embarrass yourself, it's been so long, you know." And they were against it. Because why it takes courage to express a dream is because there's so many naysayers in the world. But ladies, have you ever in your life seen a statue built to a critic? They're all built to the heroes and the heroines who actually go out and make things happen. To the creators. And so the key to that is to develop the courage to put it out there. And this 69-year-old woman had a little 12-year-old grandchild. And that little girl looked at her and said, "Grandma, go for it. Go for it. You can do anything, Grandma." And her mom and dad were saying, "No, no, no, no." So she went back to school. She graduated. She was in her early 70s when she got through. And she became the editor of a small-town newspaper where I was running a crisis center at the time. It takes courage to put our dream out there, to express that dream, because we can fall so short of it. The early suffragettes had a dream of women being able to vote, And of course, the men at the time knew women were too emotional, right? I mean, the reasoning was, well, 2 weeks out of the month, you're going to be either premenstrual or postmenstrual, and you're not going to be able to deal with the tough intellectual task of actually making wise decisions. Well, that was a fairy tale that was totally false, but there were women who had to march against men twice their size who took brickbats to them, who attacked them for daring to turn things over. Everything that's worthwhile in life takes courage. In fact, I'd like to just say this, that where your courage stops, where my courage stops, where our courage stops, is where our effectiveness in life stops. Where our courage stops is where our ability to love and connect stops. And where our courage stops is where our leadership stops. So courage is absolutely essential. And you know what's really important? To have like-minded sisters, like-minded brothers who will encourage you to be your best, to encourage you to put that dream out there and claim it. You know, when Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. said, I have a dream that someday all God's children, white children, black children, Jews and Gentiles, will come together at the table of brotherhood and sisterhood, no one would have predicted then that there would be an African American in the White House as president. Yet we changed the world. Back in the 1910s, 1920s, people wouldn't believe that women would be voting, and it changed the world. In fact, one of the decisive votes. The second act of courage is the courage to see current reality. It's not enough to dream and put it out there. I've got to be willing to see what I'm standing on. Current reality it's that foundation. And current reality is the reality of my strengths and my talents and my abilities. It's also my liabilities and challenges, the things that get in my way. One of the things I find for men, particularly, is they have trouble claiming their weaknesses. One of the challenges with female executives I work with is claiming their strengths. Because, oh my gosh, if I claim my strengths, I might have to do something with that. And the fact is, though, if you go through life and you didn't claim who you really are, you didn't claim your true voice, you didn't claim your strengths, at the end of life, what are the regrets you have? Just like if you don't claim the weaknesses, the liabilities, the challenges you face, you're going to stumble over them again and again and again. So the first act of courage is my guiding star. It's the courage to dream and to put it out there. That's where I want to go. The second act is the courage to see current reality. It's what I stand on. It's what I've got working for me and against me. Now between those two poles, where I am, where we are, where we want to go, where I want to go, it takes 5 acts of courage to go from current reality to the dream, if you have the heart to do it. So the third act that helps me go from current reality to the dream is the courage to confront. The courage to confront goes with the Sufi poem, sing a song of glory and you'll be that glory. You have to put it out there. You have to express it. It's very, very important to be able to confront. The Quakers have a wonderful saying. They call it telling truth to power. Well, telling truth to power isn't just your boss. It may not just be your spouse. It could be your mother. It could be an in-law. It could be a very challenging child, grown or not grown. Telling truth to power is absolutely essential, because if we can't tell our truth, now, I believe telling truth to power with compassion. There's a wonderful story about Howard Metcalf, a businessman, that he, at one point in his life, was suffering because his marriage was over, alienated from his kids. He was depressed. And yet, his friend Dr. Gerald Jampolsky had asked him to come visit the Center for Attitudinal Healing in Tiburon, California, and to take a look and see if he'd go out and help raise money. Now, the Center for Attitudinal Healing is where parents go when doctors look at them and say, there's nothing more we can do for your child. So it's a place where parents go to heal and bond as they deal with the impending loss of a child, and where siblings who feel guilty that they're surviving, jealous, the other one's getting all the attention, all conflicted, can work through their feelings. And of course, the child who is busy dying is loved and supported in the process. Metcalf did not want to go into that building. but he made a promise in a moment of weakness. You know how it is. Sometimes you say yes when you really wanted to say no. And he said yes, but he was a man of his word. So he goes in, he rings the bell, they bring him in, he's ushered into this room. And he steps in the room and he sees a mother and a father, he thinks, sitting here with a baby in their lap and a little girl drawing in a picture book, completely bald from her chemotherapy. He sees 3 kids playing jacks, 2 of them no hair. And he's standing there going, oh, how do I get out of this? And the receptionist goes to the back of the mansion to Gerald Jampolsky's office to get him. And while she's gone, he's standing there frozen, just not knowing what to do, and he feels a tug on his pants leg, and he looks down, and looking back up at him is this little girl with big brown eyes, about 9 years old, holding onto an IV pole with big brown eyes, looking at him, and she says, she's looking at him, he's looking at her, he doesn't know what to say, and finally she blurts out to him, gee, mister, you look terrible. And he bursts into tears. He burst into tears because here's a little girl under a sentence of death. Here he is with his nice suntan, his $1,000 Italian suit. And she's right. He's a mess. Because she's not looking at the outside. She's looking like children can, and many of us high intuitives can. She's looking straight through, and she's looking at him, and she sees this guy is soul sick. He's lost. And he's crying at the incongruity of this little girl saying it to him. And he starts sobbing, and she's patting his hand, and she guides him over to a chair, and he sits down, and she climbs in his lap, and other kids come over. You know how kids are when people are suffering or pain? They'll come around and try to offer comfort, like many of you will. And John Paulson comes out and sees his friend sitting there sobbing with these little kids around him. He says, good, Howard needs that, and goes back to his office. An hour, hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes go by. They're telling him jokes, he's laughing, he's crying, he gets up. He's in love with these kids, he's in love with this little girl. He goes out and raises millions of dollars for the center. Now, who is the leader in that story? The little girl. She had the courage to confront him, this big, tall man, and to tell her truth. And she did it with compassion. Gee, mister, you look terrible. There's a wonderful greeting, an old Christian greeting, which used to go, how is it with your soul? So when you meet somebody, you don't say, how are you doing? You say, how is it with your soul? Can you imagine the deeper connection? How is it with your soul, Carrie? How is it with your soul, Dusty? How is it with your soul, Rebecca? It requires a different response. We live in a society that wants to keep things superficial. But what we need is the depth. The answers we need aren't going to be found on the surface. They're only in the deeper heart and the deeper part. And I think those answers are, again, going to come from female leadership more than male leadership as we move forward. But you have to have the courage to confront, to put it out there, and do it with compassion. So, courage to dream, my guiding star, courage to see current reality, my portfolio of strengths, weaknesses, challenges, and the first act of that, the third act of courage, but the first act to get from here to there is the courage to confront. The next one is the counter, the courage to be confronted. If I'll dish it out, but I won't take it, if I won't hear someone else's truth or someone else's pain, then I'm saying, I'd rather not know, I'd rather be blindsided by life. I'd rather be blindsided in my marriage. I'd rather be blindsided in my parenting. I'd rather be blindsided in my business. And let me tell you, ladies, it is not a good thing to be blindsided. But if I want to be clued in, I need to make it safe for my spouse, for my kids, for my friends, for my in-laws, for my employees, for my employer, for my peers, to be able to tell me their truth and how they see or think or perceive I may be contributing to that. It doesn't mean they're right, but it is their truth. It is their perception, and I can't do anything to address it or change it or work with it if I don't know about it. The lack of the courage to be confronted led to one of my clients, a company called Bama Pie out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is owned by Paula Marshall. She's in the group of 200 female executives, top female executives in the country. And she's inherited this from her father, and she was younger, but she bypassed both her brothers because she was the person who knew how to lead more than they did. Paula in her organization had one instance about 6 years ago before she brought me in, where out of a failure to be confronted, the plant manager allowed for product contamination. It led to a $6 million loss. I believe the lack of courage to confront or be confronted, from all the evidence I've seen, leads to billions of dollars of loss and untold damage and pain in families. So, dream where I'm going, if I have the courage to put it out there, see where I stand, strengths, portfolio of weaknesses, challenges, courage to see current reality, courage to confront with compassion, the courage to be confronted, even if they're not doing it with compassion. And I can even say, excuse me, I can't hear you when you're yelling. I can't hear you when you talk to me this way. I want to hear you. Can we step back and can we do this a little more respectfully? You always have the right to ask for it to be delivered more respectfully. But it's very dangerous if you send the message, don't tell me. My ego is so fragile. My feelings are so fragile, I cannot hear. I'd rather be blindsided. That's a very dangerous message. All right, so we go to the fifth act of courage, which is the courage to learn and grow. And the courage to learn and grow, for me, a poem by a man named Edwin Markham. I discovered it when I was in 11th grade. And it was my first induction into thinking a bit more like a female leader. It was a poem, it goes like this. He drew a circle to shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a larger circle, which drew him in. He drew a circle to shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew the larger circle, which drew him in. I think what we're doing when we act as wholehearted leaders is we're drawing the larger circle. Like Nelson Mandela did in South Africa. They expected South Africa to be a bloodbath, but he drew a larger circle. We will be a rainbow nation, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Whereas Milosevic in Serbia said, Yugoslavia for the Serbs, which led to mass murder, genocide, mass rape, mass dislocation. Every time we draw the smaller circle, my little tribe versus everybody else. The wonderful book, Black Elk Speaks, by Neihardt. He talks about this old medicine man from the Plains Indians who said, as he was dying, I had a vision as a child with which I could have saved my people, but I had not the strength. And the vision he had was he was standing on the sacred mountain, which is the center of the world. And any place you stand is the center. If you see, and I was seen in the sacred way. And I saw the small hoop of my people spinning. And then I saw my hoop of my people was only one of many hoops forming one great hoop that encompassed the earth. I believe that inclusivity, the ability to draw the larger circle, it's what Jimmy Carter used with Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat at Camp David. They got the two of them together. You know what he did? He took one off and got them talking about their grandkids. He took the other one off, got them talking about their grandkids. He got them back together and he said, let me tell you what you both have in common. Your concern and love for your grandchildren. And from that, they were able to forge the Camp David Accord. Drawing the larger circle is what the greatest leaders do. And I think it is something that we need desperately in this world, more of. As opposed to the Democrat, Republican, we are one nation, we need to draw that. We need to draw a larger circle. What's the sacred hoop that we celebrate? So, this leads to the fifth act of courage, the sixth act of courage. The sixth act of courage is the courage to be vulnerable. And when I was writing the book, Executive Excellence was the first publisher of that book, they didn't want me to use vulnerability. They said, executives won't relate to that. I said, well, I'm not writing this just for executives. I'm writing it for families, and I'm writing it for 8th graders and high school students. This is for everybody. Because courage is something that's not just needed in organizations, it's desperately needed in our families and our lives. And so we kept it in. But the courage to be vulnerable is one that most executives have trouble with. It's one that I struggle with. I grew up wanting to be Superman. In fact, my mother tells a story when I was 5 years old. My father was driving down, and I had my little Superman cape on. The window was rolled down, and I decided to leap out and fly. And she grabbed my ankles at the last minute. So that tells you a little bit about my intelligence. But my mother turned very gray as raising me, and I have 5 brothers and sisters. There's 6 of us. But one of the most courageous people I know in my life is my mother. She moved over 20 times with my father in the military. And within days of moving, each house felt like a home. My mother was a little girl from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. You know, she finished high school, that was it. And here was this man, big, rough guy. She could always slow him down and back him down, though. You know, and you could say anything you wanted to her. But if you attacked my father or one of the kids, she was like a lioness. And she had the courage to really put it out there. She's still going strong at 83. And I thank God for that. Someone else who's been a lioness in my life is my wife, Christine, Ella, over here, a family physician. And Christine has been a teacher for me. And she has taught me a lot about courage. A story about vulnerability. We were pregnant with our first child. We have 3. Our first child, Sean Patrick. At the time, we didn't know whether it was a boy or a girl, so we named him Zorba Aloysius. Zorba Aloysius in the womb. Well, that was my idea. She went along with it as a placeholder. And she was working very hard. She was 3 doctors in a practice, and every 3rd night she was on call. And she was putting in 14-hour days. And she was feeling really stressed. And she went into premature labor. And we rushed to the hospital, and they say you might lose the baby. And so they're giving her tributanol. She's laying on her stomach. She's crying. I'm standing there thinking this could be our last hour with this little infant that we'd been talking to in utero ever since we found out we were pregnant, that we'd been praying over, that we'd been singing songs to. Her song, the natal song, was Amazing Grace. And it just hit me. It was like an angel brushed me. I said to her, I just looked at her, I said, if this is the last minutes, the last hour we have with this baby, let's just send him or her all the love we have. And I held her hands, and we just poured all the love we had into that baby. And I felt so much love and gratitude for this incredible woman in my life, for this incredible baby, however long we had that baby, and for the fact that, and I just felt uplifted. Well, the contractions slowed down and stopped. Now, she was on bed rest for 15 weeks. Yeah, a long time. But the blessing in that was her father, who had a drinking problem and knew he was never going to live to see this birth of this baby, he called every day, and they talked on the phone. And it was, I think, very healing for him and her. And he died 2 weeks before our son was born. But the courage to be vulnerable is the courage to realize, as adults, people die. We lose sometimes the things that are most precious to us. We're all going to die. As Jim Morrison of The Doors famously said, nobody gets out of here alive. I said that at the beginning of a workshop once, and people panicked. I said, not the workshop, I mean life. The courage to be vulnerable is the courage to realize that at some point in time, we got to let go of it all. Everything we've earned, everything we've learned, family, friends, this body. I'm very attached to my body, right? And the courage to be vulnerable is knowing that you still choose to love. And you know if you love, you're going to be hurt. You know, if you have children, you're going to be hurt. They're going to take your heart out, throw it on the floor, and stomp that sucker flat. If you're married, you're going to be hurt. If you have in-laws, you're going to be hurt. If you're going into the holidays, you're going to be hurt. You're going to be tested, as we all know. The challenge is to continue to hold on to it, as the great poet William Blake said, organized innocence. innocent to continue to trust and love, organized because I know from experience that I'll be hurt. And it takes courage to do that. And I see a lot of people, they lose something, they don't get a promotion, they go through a divorce, they lose someone they love, and they shut down, they shut their hearts, they close down. And it's like the poet Elizabeth Sewell says, they're like people who lay down in the grave and pull the marble up to their chin, hoping not to get hurt anymore, waiting for life to be over. This is your one precious, unique life. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to express it? How are you going to sing that song of glory? So you can be that. And the courage to be vulnerable is also to realize, even though I think I'm the teacher, I'm the parent, I've learned so much from my kids. Every time I do a workshop, I learn more than I think the participants do in the process. But it's also this: you thought you were the seeker and find you are the sought. What people seek, what people want, is a direct experience of your approval, of your respect, of your care, of your appreciation, even your love. And this is true for employees, it's true for peers, it's true for bosses. As a psychotherapist in Chapel Hill, I saw very successful people, people with PhDs, doctors, professors, business leaders, all insecure, all doubting themselves, all afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to be confronted, because they might see something they didn't want to see, or afraid to speak the truth because they're afraid they might offend somebody. Without courage, it all comes crashing down. And it really is finding our heart and encouraging the hearts of others. I think that is really the key. There is a wonderful poem, again, and but this is a poem by Wendell Berry that he wrote for his wife. And I think about my wife every time I think of this poem. It goes, "One faith is bondage. One faith is bondage. Two are freedom. In the trust of old love, cultivation finds a dark, graceful wilderness. Wild within that wilderness, we roam the distances of our faith, safe beyond the bounds of what we know. Oh, love, open, show me my country, take me home." Safe beyond the bounds of what we know. That's the courage to be vulnerable, to roam the wilderness of the heart, to go deeper, to go deeper, to go deeper. Robert Bly says, in every conversation, in every encounter, in business and personal family life, we have those moments when we can go up and out and escape, or we can go down and in. We go up and out, superficial. Go down and in, we connect. And what I find is that people are hungry in corporations, they're hungry in communities and families for that deeper sense of community, that deeper sense of connection, that deeper sense of personal meaning. So it all comes together with the seventh act. The seventh act is informed by the prior six, and it's the courage to take action, the courage to act. Informed by my vision, informed by current reality, informed by telling my truth to power with compassion, informed by being confronted, informed by being willing to open up, to learn and grow, to step into new realities, open up to vulnerability, to being vulnerable and open to others. And then I take action, but action that's informed by the wisdom of those prior six acts of courage. They take me to the next level. They open me up to the next level. I'll inflict a poem of mine on you called Gratitude and Grace. And I wrote this for a man, 6'4", 240 pounds, big firefighter, who damaged his shoulder and can no longer be a firefighter. And he turned to drinking. He swelled up to over 300 plus pounds, was drinking a pint of vodka mixed with white wine every day. And he had a small baby that had been born, and he was in danger of losing his life, his wife, and he was bitter. And he had an experience with a healer. And in the healing, he met this man who just looked at him with such love, and he didn't know how to handle it. And the man looked at him, and I said, "Well, what do you have to say to me?" He said, "It's time for you to let go and love yourself. It's time for you to step into who you really are. Spirit's not done with you in this world." And he said, "When you leave here, you will no longer want to drink, and you're going to start losing weight. And you need to think about what your heart most wants." Well, he walked out feeling this guy was a quack, but he went home, poured himself a big drink, and couldn't drink it. He didn't drink. Hasn't had a drink in 2 years. He's back down to 240 pounds. And he's transformed his life of one of compassion and love, drawing the larger circle instead of a circle of bitterness and anger. And this is dedicated to him. And it goes like this. You do not need to like your life to find your way to love. You do not need to like your life to find your way to love. You do not need anything else in order to be free. Sometimes it is when you are in the greatest pain that a kind word, a gentle touch, a loving glance will serve to crack the hard shell of judgment surrounding your heart. And in that moment, a tender shoot of green forgiveness simply pushes through. You do not need to like your life to find your way to love. You do not need anything more in order to be free. Sometimes it is when you are in the deepest darkness and you cannot see your way that a shining ray of light will penetrate to illuminate one searing scene of possibility, such as a child at play or the blazing sun of a common field daisy. And in that moment, who you are yet to be reaches back and down, and who you are reaches up and out to take hands in gratitude and grace, and you are drawn forth from the darkness like Lazarus rising from the grave. You do not need to like your life to find your way to love. You do not need anything more in order to be free. Be free. For me, you cannot be free unless you have the courage to claim your dream. You cannot be free unless you have the courage to see what you got working for you and against you. You cannot be free unless you have the courage to tell truth to power, wherever it may be. You cannot claim your heart and step forward unless you have the courage to be confronted. You will stumble if you don't have the courage to learn and grow, to step into the unknown, to step into ambiguity, to take that risk. You cannot be free. You cannot find love unless you have the courage to be vulnerable. And finally, it all takes action. It takes that action to move you forward. But after I'd lived with the book, I met a wise man named David Wiley who said, "You know, there's an 8th act of courage you haven't written about." And I said, "What's that, David?" He said, "It's the courage to let go." The courage to let go. And the courage to let go is the courage to step back using the other 7 acts of courage and to let go of the burden of worry, to let go of the burden of super responsibility. You know what? I look around and I imagine every woman in here is got a superwoman complex. I could be wrong, but it's a tendency to want to be perfect at everything, to do everything just right. My wife amazes me. She has so many rules up here, so many ways that you have to approach things. Men don't think this way. You know, I'll put my feet up and relax, and she's going, "How can you sit there? There's more to do." Well, it's easy. The courage to let go is the courage to let go of the super need to be super responsible. And it is the courage to step into your deeper heart and let go and let God. Let go and let divine. Let go and let spirit. I'll finish with one last poem. And it's a wonderful poem by Darrell Wilcox called Love After Love. And may this be true for all of us. There will come a time when you will meet yourself coming in your door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's greeting, saying, "Sit, you will love again the stranger who was yourself." Give bread, give wine, give back your heart again to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, who you ignored for another, who knows your secret heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf. Take down the portraits and desperate notes. Come, peel your image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Sit and feast on your life. You've created a magnificent life. People who love you. A community of sisters, of women who are in service. You have created yourself from pain and hardship and difficulty and joy and love. When is the time to sit and feast on your life, to enjoy who you are, what you've created, to be more at peace with that, and then go forward and take the next step to go even deeper, to go even further? That, for me, is what courage is about. It's finding our heart, and it's helping encourage the hearts of others to help them find their hearts, so that we step forward in gratitude and grace, and we draw each other, including ourselves, out of the darkness, just like Lazarus rising from the tomb. Well, I want to thank you for inviting me to talk to you today, and God bless you. Thank you.